Hey, this is WhyBeAre with BeamNG.drive, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Charrier TOGRAC. Now, I highly suggest you watch my Charrier Vivas video before you watch this one, because I will be making references to it, although it's not completely necessary that you watch that video. So, the TOGRAC is basically a modified Vivas. They took a Vivas and they made it into a crossover. How did they do that? First, they gave it a couple more inches of ground clearance. Then, they put black plastic all around the body of the vehicle to make it look more off-roady or something like that. In my opinion, that black plastic around the vehicle always looks worse than if it wasn't there. And then on the roof, you have some rails that you could attach luggage to, although there is no luggage as far as I can tell that you could actually attach, so I guess that's up to the mod makers to do. And then over to the front of the vehicle, the front has been redesigned so the grille is bigger because everybody likes a big grille. And then you can't see it, but there's also the addition of an under tray as well. And that covers all the major differences between this and the Vivas. And I figured we got all this ground clearance, time to do some off-roading. Whoa, what just happened? I blew out both of my tires in like 1/10 of a second of off-roading. I don't even know, that's just a glitch I think. So we're gonna pretend that didn't happen and try this again. So crossover with your mighty extra couple inches of ground clearance. How well do you go through the dirt? Fine, it's perfectly capable of going through that dirt. Then again, probably so was the Vivas. So let's make things a little bit more difficult. Instead of just driving through the dirt, it's chucking it into the river and seeing what happens. What happens is it clears the river, which is great, although it ends up on its roof, which is not so great. Get that piece out of the way so we can put it back onto its wheels. And oh no, you see all the extra ground clearance makes the weight distribution too high, so it rolls back onto its roof again. Come on, get upright. There we go. Now this is the base model, which means it has a 3-cylinder gasoline engine and just front wheel drive. So really, off-road capabilities are not any better than the Vivas equivalent, I would say, because the extra ground clearance isn't going to really do anything when you have front wheel drive and an open differential. It does absolutely nothing. Look at this, we can't even make it up this little mound of dirt. You need at least all-wheel drive to get any benefit from the extra ground clearance, I would say. So we're going to take a look at the damage. It looks a lot more sporty now, doesn't it, and aerodynamic? And now we're going to go to the next version, which is the 110D. So this setup is pretty similar to the Vivas, where you have a 110, which is the 3-cylinder gas, and then the 110D, which is the 4-cylinder diesel, both of which have the same horsepower, but the diesel has a good bit more torque, which might be useful in trying to climb this little hill right here. Come on! It just barely made it. I think the diesel really did help me right there with its extra torque to make it up that hill. And that's truly the limits of the off-road capabilities of the front-wheel drive-based TOGRACs. The good news is these are the only 2 front-wheel drive versions. All future versions we will see are going to be all-wheel drive. Ooh, and look at that. That body leans, man. I ain't used to seeing this. Look at how much lean we got in that body. That's not what I usually like to see in a vehicle, because a little bit of lean is good. That's quite a lot of lean. Oh, and by the way, I am flooring it. This is about as fast as we'll go with only 110 horsepower in a car that weighs a bit over 1.5 tons. The good news is you don't have to drive it forever. Eventually, you can find a great spot to crash it. I found a great spot to crash it. 16 times slow-mo here so we get the real good look at that impact. Beautiful. There goes the hubcap flying off. And let's see if it'll go back onto the ground or if it's going to really get stuck in the railing. So it's not super stuck, but it's probably pretty stuck, especially considering the engine is broken. It's not going to drive at all. You know, it's kind of funny. If you get the right camera angle like this, you can barely tell it's damaged. And then if you get a camera angle like this, it's like, oh yeah, that is destroyed. So we're going to bring this back, and then we're going to go to the next version, which is the 150DQ. So looking at the name, 150 means it has about 150 horsepower, D means it's diesel, and then Q means it's all-wheel drive. And with all of the TOGRACs, you do have the option for an off-road mode. Now, it does have an adaptive suspension, so I assume it changes up the suspension a little bit to make it more off-road capable, and then it could also tweak the shift points for the transmission. Don't expect anything fancy like a central tire inflation system. That's available on some really fancy off-road vehicles where it can adjust the air pressure of the tires from within the vehicle, This doesn't do that. It can just adjust the stiffness of the suspension and the shift points of the transmission. So it doesn't make a significant difference, but I will try to use the off-road mode when I'm off-roading. The problem is by default it usually comes in comfort, so I gotta remember to change it every time I change vehicles. And we're gonna be needing to change vehicles pretty soon because this one is now rolled over like a half dozen times. Surprisingly intact. Should still be able to drive, I guess. What is that weird piece sticking up? Oh, that's kind of cool. I didn't notice that. So that is like a little piece that would hide whatever's in your trunk from criminals. And it actually moves up and down. That's the first piece I've seen, at least in a stock vehicle, that moves around in the inside of the vehicle. That's really cool. They should have it where there's a pair of keys in the ignition that jingles around too. That'd be neat. Anyways, this thing's done. Next version we're going to be taking a look at is the 150 DQX. And this one is nearly identical to the one we were just driving. The only difference is this one has a little bit more ground clearance. That's what the X stands for, extreme off-roading. At least I have to assume that's what it stands for. The funny thing is if you put this side by side with the one we were just driving, you can actually barely tell that it has more ground clearance. Let me go ahead and get this thing back onto its wheels and then get another one of these right next to it for comparison purposes. So here is the regular 150 and how much ground clearance it has. And then here is the 150X version with just a little bit more ground clearance. It is not by much, it's just the tiniest bit more, but that's what makes it extreme. That is the most extreme inch of ground clearance I've ever seen. That's why it gets the X name. And that is also why we're taking this thing off-roading. And we're going to do quite a bit of off-roading with this one since it is the only X model there is. That's it. Just this one. Which is kind of weird because there are versions that are more powerful than this one that you can get. But you cannot get those in X. So there's no ultimate version of this vehicle because if you want the ground clearance and the power, well, too bad. You can't have that unless, of course, you customize it aftermarket, which is something I could totally do if I wanted to. I should just make more custom cars for me to use in videos, right? You know, have a 230DX or whatever I feel like, and it's just a stock version that should be technically possible. Anyways, I think we might have ruined this thing. Oh no, actually, it's still drivable-ish. I gotta get some momentum going so we can actually get through the bushes and not get drug along by them, but I think we can get this thing going some more. Yeah, look at that. So it can still drive. Oh, well, now we're doing a skateboard grind. And look at the rear drive shaft. What is going on with that? It just broke. I swear to you, it looked like at that angle and apparently it was working and then it broke when I hit accelerate. So this thing is pretty much dead now since it's just front wheel drive. So here's a look at the damage. And then we can move on to the next version, which is going to be the 160Q, which has about 10 horsepower more and it uses a gasoline engine and it's stuck on the rocks. This is why you need the X with the extreme clearance. It would have been fine. No, it wouldn't. It would have been stuck too. It was already stuck there. But as I was saying, this one has the normal suspension setup, but it has a gasoline-powered engine that makes 160 horsepower-ish, which is about 10 horsepower more than the diesel one we were just driving. That's another thing worth mentioning. You cannot get the X edition with its extra ground clearance with a gasoline engine. It's just that one diesel model. That's it. Now, what if you were an idiot who was like, I have a crossover, it can off-road, and then you smash into a rock? That's what it would look like. That's why you don't do that with your crossover. Quite a bit of damage there. And then looking over on this side, it doesn't look too bad. If we get the right camera angle like that from the back, it looks okay. But this side, yeah, that's hefty damage. So next up, we're going to go to the 190DQ, which is kind of strange because it's the fastest non-electric version of the TOGRAC, but it's a diesel that makes 190 horsepower. On the Vivas, you had gas engines that went all the way up to 410 horsepower. So there is no such thing as a high-performance version of the TOGRAC from the factory. It simply does not exist, which is kind of surprising because there are high-performance crossovers out there that seem to sell decently well, like the BMW X5M is a great example of that as we fly through the air. Children, good news, we have arrived at the campsite. Here is our tent. Isn't it a nice tent, guys? I think this thing should still be able to drive. I know the axle's broken, but it's not gonna stop me. I got all-wheel drive. I don't have whatever piece of the body I just yanked off, though. Come on, go! Can't get traction. There we are. And we gotta do a little bit of finagling to get ourselves through this tight area. Now left. Does it have good steering still? It has enough steering to make it through, and we can keep on going. Excellent. Now how fast can we go is the next question. The answer is not very fast, but we can make a lot of smoke. Ooh, can we jump off of the bridge with my extra ground clearance? Nope. What's the point of a TOGRAC if you can't even jump off the side of a bridge and explode in a million pieces on the bottom? I should have just got a Vivas. Oh well, we can at least jump off the edge over here and do a little bit of damage to it. Won't be quite as dramatic because the jump isn't as big, and interestingly, we crashed the rear, but that broke the engine. Kind of an unusual crash, and I really yanked that thing. You just yank it, right? Eventually it has to land on its wheels if you yank it hard enough. See? Yanking it a ton works great. So here is a look at the damage, and I do have Lamborghini doors installed on the driver's side apparently. That's kind of funny looking. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a mod that gives you Lamborghini doors. Anyways, next up we're going to take a look at the police edition, which is based on the 150DQ. So it has 150 horsepower diesel engine and all-wheel drive. And of course, all the policing accessories you'd want, like the paint job and the sirens, which you can turn on. And they say Poliza Alt, which makes me just think it's an alternative skin for the police and it's advertising itself. But really, it's just not speaking to me in English. That's what's actually going on. With this version, we're gonna try to do a jump. And the jump is pretty big. I do not expect it to make it through the jump at all. I'm telling you now, we're taking this jump to hopefully bang up the vehicle and get some good damage on it. So we're gonna be going close to 60 miles per hour as we hit the jump. That's not the jump, that's the bump. And this is the jump. We are flying upside down a little bit and landed. We landed it. Got a little bit of scrunched up front, but still drivable. I also kind of like how the hatch looks like a wing. It just extends out farther to give you that extra downforce for more speed. Because everybody loves speed. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and finish this thing off. Even if it doesn't stop driving, we are done because I am not the police. I ain't no snitch. I'm quiet. You know what else is quiet? The electric version of the TOGRAC. So this is the TOGRAC QE. And there are a couple of visual differences on this version. The first you'll probably notice is those wheels, which are hideous but interesting at the same time. And then the grille, which is blocked off, and it's kind of like Tesla-like, I guess you could say, because they really started the no grille look. And I really just hate it. I don't like that at all. The wheels, though, like, they're hideous, but they're interesting. So I like them, but I think they're objectively bad. Another thing about this version is there is no off-road mode. It just doesn't exist for this one for some reason. And we have a jump coming up. We are going to completely overshoot this for maximum fun. Yeah, this one is easily the fastest one there is. That thing really, really was moving. And we did not have that much room to accelerate. We have broken 2 of the axles, but this one is all-wheel drive, just like all the other ones we've seen recently. And it can still push itself along with just the rear wheels. And in the current state it's in, again, the electric version of the Vivas and the TOGRAC are really, really durable vehicles. So now for the final one we're going to be taking a look at, it is the TOGRAC Amateur Rally Gravel version. And the really interesting thing about this guy is that he is exclusively front-wheel drive, but he has 150 horsepower. Kind of an unusual configuration for a rally car. For me, usually, you think rally car, you think, oh yeah, let's get some all-wheel drive into here, right? Not this one. You'll also notice the roof bars on this vehicle are gone, so you cannot take your luggage on the rally course. Also, the interior has been stripped down a bit, and it has a roll cage in it to keep you a little bit extra safe. Also, it has a customized paint job, a nice little stripe on it, and I can't drive looking at this angle. We're going to drive completely off the road into the river if I continue this for any longer. So let's go ahead and pay attention to where I'm driving. And I want to take a little bit more of a look at the electric version in a second, but I want to get to the nice flat road to do that. And the best way to get to there is through the off-road area, and I figure, you know what? That's the perfect time to drive the off-road TOGRAC. And we are getting close to where I want to go. It's the highway, and we could access it by going straight across right here, or we could follow the dirt road and see where it leads us. Actually, what we should do is we should enter the highway from the other side. So we'll continue driving along the highway for a little bit more. And do a little bit of crashing too. I gotta wreck this thing up first, right? We haven't had any crashing yet with the roll caged version of the TOGRAC. As you see there, completely fine. It can keep on going. Probably, let's see, how straight does it drive? Straight enough. It's a little bit of a pull, but we can manage this. And now we look for the next thing to crash into. Once we see the target, we will hit it. There's the target. Fly! Nice. And hey, I have now decorated the Christmas tree. What do you guys decorate your Christmas trees with? I use TOGRACs because that's all they're good for. Anyways, here is the damage. And then we'll go ahead and bring this thing back out of the tree. And we're going to continue driving along. And coming up, we have a road that's a little bit more difficult than a rally course would normally be. But it should be a great test to see, can the TOGRAC do this? So you see, it's just a little bit steeper than you would normally see at a rally course. But most vehicles should be able to make it up with maybe a little bit of damage by bottoming out and going fast through it. With the TOGRAC, it didn't seem to bottom out though, and it continued along just fine. And now, we are finally to the paved road, which means it's now time to do a test. I want to see just how fast the electric version of the TOGRAC is. So we're going to have a little drag race here, okay? It's not going to be a great drag race, but it'll work good enough. So we're going to put the electric TOGRAC right here. Wow, that thing took a minute to stop. It was like in reverse when it was trying to brake. I don't know what just happened there. Anyways, we're going to get the electric version of the TOGRAC, and we're going to have a little drag race. So it's going to be this guy versus something real big and fast, like the King Snake version of the Barstow. And then we freeze physics, hold down the accelerator on both of the vehicles, and the race is on. So the TOGRAC's going in a straight line all on its own. I am controlling the Barstow, and with its amazing V8 engine that makes over 500 foot-pounds of torque, it has lost to an electric crossover. That's how fast that thing is. That's a mighty fast vehicle who has now completely wrecked himself over here. But that's why I wanted to bring him back for us to show you how fast he was. And now, to finish things off, let's go ahead and head over to the Leap of Death. And for Leap of Death, there's really no specific model that stands out to me as the one to use. So we're going to go with the electric version just because it's the fastest one. Although ideally I would have the electric version and the extra ground clearance so we could really hit that jump without having to worry about getting stuck on it, which sometimes happens, but the TOGRAC has a ton of ground clearance already. It's fine. Also, you can see the underside is slightly different on the electric ones because they don't have an exhaust or anything like that going through it. And we're going to run this at full speed. Boom! Impact. Car exploded. You gotta have variety. Most of the time I do slow-mo on Leap of Death, but every now and then it's time for a full speed run. And this is completely destroyed. Can't even tell it was a car anymore, really. It's just a mangled mess, just as always at Leap of Death. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this video. Until next time, this is WhyBeAre, and remember, if you like or dislike this video, I will know. I can tell by measuring the ground clearance on the TOGRAC. So do the right thing, and I'll see you next time. Bonus jump. Also, bonus jumps don't obey gravity, just in case you didn't know.